Yo, what's happening, Raider Nation? It's your boy Soto here. You know what it is. Raiders versus the world, talking about the team that the world loves to hate, your Las Vegas Raiders. Alrighty, today we're going to talk about the top 10 free agents that the Raiders have going into the 2025 offseason. But before we do, I want to make sure everyone please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video to all your socials. It's the absolute minimum you can do to help this channel besides doing absolutely nothing. All right, guys, let's get started. All right, not to bring up old stuff, but 2024, yeah, it was pretty rough. We only won 4 games, really weren't in a lot of games, even though some of the scores were pretty close. One of the positives about having so many injuries is you get to see some extended play by guys who are either backups or young players who you didn't really think you were going to rely on very much. And you get to see what you have, and it'll help you make decisions moving forward. Maybe a young guy impressed you. You don't really need to sign the veteran because you have a young guy that can come up. It can happen. The 4 wins in 2024 led to the firing of Coach Antonio Pierce and GM Tom Telesco. So now we have Pete Carroll and John Spytek, respectively, to lead us going forward. Now, the biggest thing to happen roster-wise, okay, going into the offseason is the new league year starting, which is the start of the first wave of free agency. After that, you have the combine, then you have, like a second wave, the draft, stuff like that. So we're going to talk about the top 10 Raiders free agents, positives, negatives, and what the Raiders can do moving forward. Okay, big thing here. We're only talking about unrestricted free agents, okay? The big difference is if you're a restricted free agent, all the Raiders have to do is match the offer that you were given, and you stick around. Also, you can tender a few players. That means you get a comp pick if that player is signed by someone else and you choose not to retain him. That's a plus for us as well. It's all a big game. We're not going to get into a lot of that right now. We're going to get into players, okay? First up is Trayvon Merrick, safety. The 2021 second-round pick kind of had a breakout season in 2023 and really stepped out in 2024 after Marcus Epps got his injury. He became the leader of the secondary. He was asked to do a lot more, and he really excelled in his extended role. He played a lot closer to the line of scrimmage, and he recorded career highs in tackles, 104. He had 5 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits, and 10 passes defensed, all career highs. Now, this play was expected. He was a Jim Thorpe Award winner his last year at TCU, so combine that with the fact that his play now is catching up to the hype and scouting report, he should be a really popular free agent. It's going to be really difficult to keep. This is one of the targets that Spytek should really look after right away to get sewn up, because he's going to be probably the guy on our free agent list that's going to have the most attention. All right, next on the list is linebacker Robert Spillane. Now, it's no secret that Robert Spillane was like Antonio Pierce's guy. So he did lose a little support on the coaching staff after Pierce was let go, but Patrick Graham loves him. He says he's a leader and an extension of the coaching staff on the field. A big positive about Spillane is that he really improved his coverage skills thanks to Antonio Pierce and others in the coaching staff. He was kind of known as more of like a thumper and a run stuffer, stuff like that, but he's really improved his coverage skills, and instead of being looked at as maybe a liability in the passing game, he's actually a positive. Add to that the fact that he's an Iron Man. He's played all 34 games in his 2 seasons with the Raiders. You can't put a price tag on that. Spillane broke out in 2024, which is good for him. It's his contract year, right? He had 154 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 7 passes defense. That's a linebacker. That's a lot. And he's had 5 picks in the last 2 years with the Raiders. I'm telling you, I liked him a lot when we got him from the Steelers. I saw a little bit more after an extended period his last year with the Steelers. There was an injury. I think it was Bush. He got injured with the Steelers, and he had an extended playing time the last 5 or so games. He really broke. I saw a lot from him there, and I was expecting him to grow, which he did. Coaching is one thing. Receiving the coaching and putting it on the field is another. Expect Robert Spillane to get attention from the rest of the league, and his market value is going to be determined by the free agent market. I really don't know what it is yet. I wouldn't suggest he's going to get a ton of money, but I mean, he is a productive player, and I think he's more valuable to the Raiders than anybody else. All right, next on the list is the defensive end edge rusher, Malcolm Kuntz. Okay, Malcolm Kuntz, his last 2 years playing, because he didn't play last season, he had 8 sacks and 17 quarterback hits. He seemed to come on the last 9 games or so when he was a consistent starter when Antonio Pierce took over in his interim year. But unfortunately, in his contract year, he had a non-contact knee injury. The practice before the first game of the season, he missed the entire 2024 year. Now, reports are that he's, recovering nicely from that injury, so it shouldn't be an issue. But I mean, you have to balance the fact that the production really wasn't there the entire time to coming off an injury. It's the worst time to have an injury if you're going to be a player going into your contract year. So again, this is another player where, the market's going to dictate his value. I would suggest that he comes back to the Raiders because I believe it's the best opportunity for him to put up the best stats. If I were Malcolm Kuntz or I was his agent, I would say go back to the Raiders on a short deal, maybe even a 1-year deal to prove your worth and up your worth the next season if you ball out. Again, production hasn't been great, but he hadn't played a lot either. The beginning of that, most of that year in 2023, it was a lot of Tyree Wilson trying to validate the first round pick, and he didn't do very well. Malcolm Kuntz was definitely one of the catalysts to that defense the second half of 2023. Let's hope we can get him re-signed on a nice contract, and if maybe we can get the club option year on the second year or a boost, I think he might go for it. All right, next is Clevion Chase on defensive end. 2020 first round pick by the Jags, so he has a lot of skills and a lot of raw talent coming out of college. Raiders picked him up in September after he was dropped by the Panthers. Panthers had an awful defense, man. I don't know how bad he was playing or how bad he was practicing with the Panthers for them to drop him, but those problems were all in the past when it came to the Raiders. The final 6 games of the season, Chason had 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, and a crazy acrobatic interception. And he dropped another one he could have had as well. He's only 26 and he has the skills and traits that you want to have in an edge rusher. Burst, athleticism, and range. After he took over that spot, he really was one of the better defensive linemen the Raiders had. All reports say that Patrick Graham and Rob Leonard love the guy, so expect him to get a lot of interest from the Raiders to come back. I would hate for him to hit the free agent market and just get a massive deal off of the potential he showed coming out of college and also the last 6 games of last season. All right, here's where it starts to get a little tricky, okay? The next on the list is Adam Butler. Now, the thing about Adam Butler that's a little bit iffy is the fact that he's already 30 years old. Normally, defensive interior linemen don't blossom, right, when they're in their 30s. They take a lot of beatings. They have a lot of injuries in their career going up to that point. But Adam Butler, once he took over that starting defensive tackle role, he kind of flourished. Adam Butler's snap total doubled after Christian Wilkins' injury. In the last 8 games of the season, he had 5 sacks and 7 tackles for loss. That's pretty good production from the defensive tackle spot. He became a mentor to Tyree Wilson, kind of trying to bring him along. He's huge. He's like 6'5", well over 300 pounds. He's quick. He's agile. He needs to be a little bit better versus the run for him to be like getting major bucks, but I think he wants to improve on the 1-year, $1.8 million contract he signed. If I'm the Raiders, depending on what I do in the draft, I kind of maybe let him look at the market a little bit, but if things are looking pretty slow, if you don't really find a guy in the draft that really measures up to Adam Butler's skill set, I say you bring him back on a little bit of a bump. All right, here's where it starts getting tricky, okay? Next on the list is Marcus Epps. Now, Marcus Epps, he was never like a game changer. He was a solid, reliable, dependable safety, but fell short of spectacular. His tackling really wasn't the greatest, and a near injury in September really derailed the entire season for him. Another example of a rough injury in a contract year. He's 29 years old coming off of a knee injury, so he's going to get a cheaper deal than the 2-year, $12 million he signed the last time he signed with the Raiders. So if we do decide to bring him back, it's going to be at a much cheaper rate, I think. Now, Isaiah Pola-Mao took over and did a pretty good job doing so, I think the Raiders may have found Epps' replacement and may let him walk. Next is cornerback Nate Hobbs. Nate Hobbs is better in the slot than outside. He's shown that he can be pretty good when he plays, but he's just inconsistent and injury prone. He'll have a great game one week and then just kind of disappear the next. It's a really concerning pattern that the lack of consistency has kind of followed him throughout his career. In the 4 years with the Raiders, he's missed 17 games. That's a lot. That's a little bit more than 4 games a season. It's not a way to get paid if you're a slot corner. What the league thinks about Nate Hobbs and his market price around the league it's going to determine whether the Raiders bring him back or not. All right, up next is linebacker Divine Diablo. Divine Diablo, he's like a physical freak. He has all the measurables physically. He's a little bit undersized as a linebacker, which is why it's a little bit concerning that he wouldn't be better in pass coverage than he is. I mean, arguably, Spillane is better versus the pass than Divine Diablo is, and Diablo was a safety in college. Diablo was a 2021 third-round pick, and the regime that picked him is long gone. Now, as a linebacker, he's a little bit undersized, and his tackling needs to be a little bit better, but also his coverage reads need to be a little bit better, and his anticipation needs to be better. So he just needs to improve overall if he wants to be considered a consistent starting linebacker in this league. I think he's the best that we had available, but I think we can definitely do better. I mean, for as athletic as Diablo is, just stats are pretty modest. He has 2 sacks, no interceptions, no forced fumbles, 6 pass breakups, and 10 tackles for loss in 42 starts. You'd think if you were starting games at linebacker, you'd have a little bit better stats than that. I don't know, man. It just seems like he should be more productive for the amount of playing time that he gets. I mean, if we can bring him back on a really nice low deal, I think maybe we should, but definitely look for an upgrade at that position. All right, up next is Harrison Bryant at tight end. Man, he has all the skills to be a really good player, but just unfortunately, he's playing behind Brock Bowers. And then double unfortunately, he's playing behind Michael Mayer as well, who are just better than he is. Now, Harrison Bryant is a much better blocker, and blocking tight ends who have the hands that Harrison Bryant does are coveted across the league. So he's going to get some interest. So expect a bunch of teams to kind of give him an offer. If we bring him back, all depends on what we do in the draft and free agency with other young players. But I mean, dude's a stud. If you give him the opportunity, it's just he's not quite elite. And there's a lot of really, really good tight ends and H-backs that are coming out in the draft. It's going to be tough to sign him considering all the young talent out there. All right, rounding out the list are running backs Amir Abdullah and Alexander Madison. The reason I put them together was because they're kind of like in the same boat. Abdullah's 31, but he did have his first 100-yard game in his career this last season. Madison was seen to be a guy that can really tote the rock and help out in the run game, but he only averaged 3.2 yards per carry last year. Now, both are really good locker room presence, and Abdullah's looked at as a really good contributor on special teams as a return man. Now, both of these guys are likely to walk, with the Raiders going with younger options at running back. But I mean, out of the two, expect Abdullah to be brought back just because of his kind of prowess on special teams. Next on the list is John Jenkins. Now, he did start every single game this last season, but he turns 36 before the season starts. That kind of makes his re-signing pretty unlikely. Now, he did have a decent season as a run stopper, but ultimately, there's got to be a point where you turn the page and you look for an upgrade. This is definitely a position, defensive tackle, where we need to have an upgrade. Now, it's no secret that Jenkins is like a favorite of Patrick Aaron and Rob Leonard. I don't know. He may be brought back, but ultimately, it would be at a very low deal, and that would be if things go horribly wrong at the defensive tackle spot. I think John Jenkins is going to let walk. All right, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below about the top 10 free agents and where they're stacked. Let me know what you think we should do. Who's your favorite free agent to keep? Who are the guys you think we should let walk? As always, everybody, please like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video to all your socials. It's the absolute minimum you can do to help this channel besides doing absolutely nothing. All right, guys, appreciate your time, everybody. Until next time, peace. Hey, Raider Nation, thanks for watching. There's plenty more where that came from. Go ahead and smash that like button, drop a comment, make sure to subscribe, and share to all your socials. It's the bare minimum you can do without doing absolutely nothing.